everybody, and welcome back once again. Tonight, we're going to continue on with our series on our noble virtues, and tonight we'll be discussing self-reliance. We're in for a treat tonight. We've got Folkbuilder Nathan Erlandson on here. It is his first appearance on Victory Never Sleeps, so I'm excited for y'all to get to know him just a bit. Thinking of top of the show business to run down for you guys coming up very quickly. I believe just about 2 weeks. We've got Charming of the Plow at Njordshof. This is their first national level event that's being hosted at Njordshof, which is our newest Hof. We're all very, very excited about it. The folks down there have put a whole lot of love into this place. It's beautiful. I'd love for you all to get a chance to go see it. It's going to be the first time my wife and daughter are joining me on one of these out-of-town excursions in quite some time, so I'm excited. The other things you should know, that's in the town of White Springs, Florida. So that's North Florida. It's very doable for a lot of our southern members. Definitely something to think about if you can make it. If you're thinking about doing that, please make sure to reach out to your local folk builder and they can get you all set up. Also, since the last time I spoke to you guys, we had our first event at Sigurheim. Now, it was cold and it is a virgin piece of property right now, but it was amazing to get to go see that with some of our AFA family. It was fantastic. We scouted out the property. It is beautiful. You know, I've been stalking this place for months in every kind of online way I could with satellite views and all kind of stuff, but was not prepared for just how amazing it is in person. It is everything that we wanted and hoped for it to be and much, much more. One of the biggest things that stands out about it is just the expanse of it when you get there. It is a good piece of property with a lot of room to build our hopes and dreams on. We did a tier bloat up at the top of one of the ridges where we plan on putting Tiers Hof, and it was very powerful. And I want to thank everybody who came out to that. Big thanks to folk builder Melissa Mills for helping to, basically to run that event. I just got to show up and look pretty, and she basically ran the event, and it was great. Turned out fantastic. I know I'm blabbing a lot about it, but I'm pretty excited. It was really neat to get to actually see it in person. There's no way that, I did a little video. Looks like we're all standing in front of the same basic wall of leaves. Doesn't capture it at all. It is really, really an amazing spot. But without further ado, Nathan, introduce yourself to the folks that may not be familiar with you. And if you could tell us a little bit about what you do for the AFA.
Yeah, absolutely. My name's Nathan Erlandson. I'm a folk builder and Gothar student in Baldershof District out of Minnesota up here. I also help manage Baldershof specifically, along with the district out here.
Okay, so I asked everybody this their first time on the program. Can you tell us how you discovered Asatru and how you became part of the Asatru Folk Assembly?
Absolutely. So I was raised and born in a Catholic household, and started asking some really tough questions at a pretty young age, probably right around 12 or 13 years old. And those questions, nobody ever seemed to have any good or even legitimate answers to. And so I started pulling away from that because something felt wrong with it altogether throughout it to me. And so I started a long road of very, very slow progression towards finding our ancestral faith and practices. And then that led me to ultimately, probably about 6 or 7 years ago, I stumbled upon some of Stephen McNallen's work. And watched some of his older videos on DVD, ended up getting his book, and that led to other books regarding our practices in faith. And then a couple years ago, not long after I met my fiance, Ashley McStalker, she was already an AFA member. And I had heard about the AFA, obviously, through researching Steve and reading his material and everything like that. But I wasn't quite sure about it. Didn't really know where to go to find it or anything at that time until Ashley showed me where to go. And I applied, and the rest is history, really.
Fantastic. Starting to get some questions over on the side. I know it looks like you got a lot of fans in the chat room. Before we get there, so to reiterate, when we put folks on here as guests about each of these virtues, it all starts with a question that I ask our folk builders in an email thread. You know, which of our leaders do they think best exemplifies each of these virtues? And it's a special thing because, you know, a lot of the time I'll have in my head who I think that person ought to be, and a lot of the time it works out. But it's really important. This is by the. I'm sorry, my wife just handed me some tea, and I got that going. No, anyways, it's an honor that they're selected by their peers on this. So I think that Nate is not only a good choice, but his fellow folk builders in Gothar also overwhelmingly thought that he was the guy on this virtue. So if you could tell us, you know, it, unlike some of the others, this one may seem self-evident, but can you tell us a little bit about what self-reliance means to you?
Yeah, self-reliance to me is so much more than just being survival. Okay, a lot of people associate self-reliance with survival, living off the land, not needing anybody. And that couldn't be further from the truth. Self-reliance is relatable to free will, which ultimately is to be one's own man or woman, and comes with certain duties, responsibilities, chiefly responsibilities for yourself and the choices and deeds that you make and commit, which ultimately leads to self-determination. It's something that in an individual, you don't wait for the world to hand you anything. You go and you take it. You go after what you want. And it's not that you push others away and isolate yourself, because that would be something completely different. Free will or self-reliance is also an interconnectedness, and it's not shutting people out, but it's utilizing the world around you to go after what you want and to make things happen, and to not have any reliance on anybody as an individual, but also as a family, as a community, as a group, as a tribe. And you don't let others do the thinking for you. You think for yourself. You're not satisfied to let others do your work. You know, you're self-driven, self-motivated, and have drive. Basically, that's what it comes down to. Have drive for yourself, for your family, for your community, your church, your tribe.
Well, good. I think that's a good place to start on it. This one isn't a confusing one, but the application for it, I think it finds itself in a lot of ways that people don't necessarily think of it up front. So let's start with some of our questions. Tim asks, Nathan, what are some of your life experiences that have taught or made you self-reliant? Anything in particular you'd like to share?
Lots of things. A couple of major ones, for instance. I played sports all through my youth, growing up, all through high school. And in order to succeed in any of those team sports, team being the key word, you had to have drive, motivation, along with the skill. Not to mention, you still had to follow direction. And that led me into joining the military. I did 2 enlistments. My first enlistment, I signed up with U.S. Army, and before I even graduated high school, and as a firefighter, I wanted to be part of that kind of team, and I was willing to run into those burning buildings when everybody else is running out. And I really loved being a firefighter. Was stationed in Alaska for a period of time, excelled at it, loved it, and then 9/11 rolled around. When 9/11 rolled around, I had been actually out of that first initial enlistment for a few months only. And I took the day off of work that day, went back to the recruiter's office, and enlisted as an infantry soldier this time, which brought me to a whole nother level of not only self-reliance, but group reliance, because you operated not only as an individual, but as a team, as a squad, as a platoon, as a company. And, that changed me. That really formed who I became as a man in life. And it's who I still am. I still have those drives at the core of who I am. And that's what really brought me to being where I'm at that point. That's the most significant experience in my life that shaped who I am today.
So Tim follows that up with, Matt, same question. So I think this is a kind of another way of going about the virtue of self-reliance. One of the things that I think is important, and I do think this relates, but maybe it's a little bit tangential. We all have visions of who we'd like to be or the life we'd like to have. And all too often people recognize that distance and just assume it can't be crossed or there's nothing you can do about it. And the successful folks, or people that I admire quite a bit, are people who make those things happen in their life, who see what they want and take the steps to attain it, or to, if not to attain it, to be, a far sight closer to attaining it than they are at present. And that's something that that was important to me. Just distant. I'm trying to think of any great example on that. A lot of it is the distance between who I wanted to be and who I was. My dad didn't spend a lot of time with me growing up. I suppose he did when I was very young, but in my teenage years, he and my mom had a divorce, and he was with my stepmom and their family. And for a variety of reasons, he and I weren't close during that time period. So I didn't really have that male influence in those years of my life helping me with some stuff. So a lot of stuff I had to figure out on my own. I've mentioned this before on the show many times, but my role models growing up in the 80s and early 90s are, these larger than life figures. And I was this scrawny, didn't have any friends, nerdy kid in high school that, I didn't really take off in those ways until I became an adult. And right around 2000, about a year after I graduated, I decided, I'm going to start making an effort. What's the difference between me and these guys that I wish I was like, or these people that I think in my head I ought to be? And I started trying to take a swing at that. And I felt like I was way behind. I think one of the things a lot of folks in my generation and the generations that have come since run into is, if you miss the boat early on, socially, with your peers, with girls, with sports, with things in school that a lot of people get, every year that you don't catch up with those things, the obstacle becomes harder and harder to get on top of and to accomplish. And it's one of the things that I really had to accelerate as a young adult. And so I started hitting the gym. I started, trying to get my diet where it needed to be to put on some size. I went to the roughest bar in town and decided I was going to bounce there and learn some skills that way and learn about myself. So really trying to seize those things, but it's carried over a lot in my AFA involvement. And this is something that I wanted to bring up. And I suppose this is as good a time as any. When people join the AFA, they always assume that there's an infrastructure in place that's always been there, that always will be, that just gets things done. This magical institution that someone out west. When I first joined, it was Steve or somebody in California makes AFA happen everywhere. And what people don't realize, it's a whole lot of individuals that are self-reliant. It's a whole lot of people that step up and say, hey, there's nothing going on here, so I'm going to folk build. There's nothing going on. Where's an event? Oh, there's nothing near me. Well, I'll host one at my house. It's that makes up the AFA and makes it all work. And it's not an individual pursuit. It's all of us working together, but it's made up of individuals that have really had to pioneer the area that they're in. And that was something I certainly had to do in Alaska when I was the folk builder up there. And I've seen that a lot of places. So something I've really seen in my life is when you look around for heroes and one is not readily available, it's your job to become that hero, to become the hero of your own story, to become the hero of other people's story that can inspire them and they can look up to. And I think that's kind of where some of my, some of the self-reliance I have is rooted in that. Brandy asks, Nathan, how did your self-reliance and dedication help bring Baldershoff to what it is today?
Well, thanks, Brandy. Thanks, Whit and Callahan. I guess that's rooted in my personality, the core of my personality, unwilling to ever give in, give up when it comes to not the battles, but the war. And to put that into perspective, obviously, to win wars, sometimes you have to relinquish here and there. But with Baldershoff, I was in a fortunate position. I guess timing was perfect where I was able to be out there 3 or 4 days a week when it was under construction, when it was being revamped. And that's all I wanted to do. I was in a position to where I was technically on work comp during that time. So I was able to do that. And that's one of the greatest things that I've ever been able to be part of, was transforming Baldershoff into what it is. And without a series of events transpiring the way that they had, I may not have had that opportunity to do so.
Yeah, you've made such a difference up there. Baldershoff is really a story of, a handful of individuals in self-reliance in a lot of ways. Folks that may not be familiar, when we got a steal of a deal on Baldershov, we got an amazing, amazing deal. One of the reasons it was such an amazing deal was that it was in a sorry state when we got it. Needed a lot of repair work, a lot of love, a lot of help to get it where it needs to be and to get it back beautiful. And a lot of people don't have that skill set, but fortunately we were able to have some people that were able to go in, put the time, put the effort, put the blood, sweat, and tears to make that place shine and be the amazing temple to Balder that it is today. And Nathan's certainly one of those guys. Cody asks, hey, Nate, what are some ways our folk can become more self-reliant in a society that continues to push us towards dependency?
Great question, Cody. I would say that probably the foremost aspect to that question and answer would be to stop going with the crowd. Do what's important to you. Don't necessarily just resort to doing something because it's the easy way or it's what others are doing. Do what's right. Right action means everything. And you'll find so often today that people are just acting, or not even acting, just blindly following things without any real personality in it, nothing that defines them in their course of action. And so when it comes to self-reliance, make a name for yourself. Strive to constantly improve areas of your life and build a community, build a family, build a church. It's the blind leading the blind, really, in our society today. And our folk are opening their eyes finally and coming home. And that means they have taken that first step to being self-reliant in a community and a culture, not a community, but a culture that frowns upon that individuality and taking that step towards doing something that's important to you.
Yeah, it's a real delicate balance. And I know that I beat the drum of community and, going along with our community a lot, because I think it's important. And we certainly need that unity of purpose. We need to be able to work together. But one of the keys to that, we all function better if we're made up by a collection of strong people. And we can be there and lift each other up when we're individually strong. Strong individuals make a strong community. And so we really want to see every one of our members, become the very best version of their self that they can be. And, that can be physically, mentally, spiritually, financially, all of those things. But that really is important to us. And I'd encourage anybody out there that, feels like they need some help with that to reach out to their local Gothi or Githia and get a plan in place on how to shape up and make the best you can be. I think we can all be better than we are today. And we should all be striving to do that and to help each other do that. One of the things, Cody, that strikes me with your question is so many of our people are isolated and feel defeated or feel the distance between their dreams and themselves is too far for them to do anything about. So they spend an awful lot of time on the internet complaining. And one thing that I think is really important about self-reliance is being reliant on yourself in terms of providing your own motivation. And I don't think previous generations had that same problem in the way that we see around us today as much. But everyone needs this motivation today, because breaking that lethargy and breaking the armchair quarterbacking of life seems to be a real challenge that's before us today. So I think that's an important thing about self-reliance to consider as well. John asks, what will be the requirements to move to Sigurheim? So stay tuned, John. That's something that's evolving a little bit, and I'm sure it will continue to evolve um, as space starts filling in and, as we learn things. As far as hard and fast rules, got to be AFA members. But it's more than that. At Sigurheim, we're not just going to be AFA members. We're going to be the very best example to others of what the AFA should and could be. And so that's important. It means holding yourself to a higher standard that way. The other thing, we need to be committed to each other's success at Sigurheim. We need to be committed to the success of Sigurheim with everything we have, with our labor, financially, taking care of it. And one of the things that sounds silly, but is absolutely essential, is we need to be hyper frithful with Sigurheim. The people who are actually going to live there together in an AFA village need to be absolutely committed to maintaining a good relationship with one another. And that means there's no room for pettiness or for problems that linger. They need to be solved and moved forward. And this is all kind of ethereal, I think, as far as practical things go. We want somebody who's going to build a home there, and a home that looks respectable to our folk, not a shanty, not a, it needs to look like a nice place where noble people live, not a squalid place like the Res or something. So whatever we have needs to be clean and nice and have a home that people would intend to live in that looks nice. Another thing that's going to be relevant to Sigurheim is those folks are going to be folks paying Hoftoller. They're probably going to be paying that Hoftoller at something like 10%. Those people are going to need to be really chipping in because we're going to do a lot of stuff. There's the infrastructure and all the things that go into running basically an AFA village. So we're really going to lean on people heavily there. We're going to lean on each other to make sure things happen. And basically that commitment. People who move to Sigurheim need to be AFA through and through and 1000% committed to our success and to victory in general. And we're looking forward to folks that are going to do that. If it's something that you're interested in, please reach out. You can reach out to your local folk builder or to me, and we can try to get that all set up. We're at that stage, and I'm really excited to see who the first folks that are going to be those pioneers are going to be. I'm probably, at least a year and a half, if not more, out before I can, my family can do it. So between now and then, I'm very excited to see the folks that'll be pioneering that. Trent, Nate, could you please explain the importance of the OneArm Push Up?
Absolutely, Trent. The importance of the OneArm Push Up not only signifies and represents strength in an individual, but also balance, technique, form, which is one and the same with technique, and just more than anything, Trent, it's dedication. It's drive and dedication. You want to do that OneArm push-up, you will do that OneArm push-up.
So you guys may not all get the inside joke, but Goth East is deficient in his ability to do OneArm push-ups. And by deficient, I mean he can't do a OneArm push-up at present. So I would like to see that change. In contrast, Folkbuilder Nathan Erlandson is a champion of OneArm push-ups. I can't really get to the spot where he actually wins out on it because he leaves the competition in the dust. So this man can do some OneArm push-ups. I've seen it, respect it. Tim asks, Nathan, could you tell us about your Feast of the Einherjar event and what it means to you?
Feast of the Einherjar is so important to me on multiple levels. As an infantry soldier myself, it screams importance. It screams ritual. It screams remembrance for brothers of mine that I've lost. Brothers of mine that I lost not only in combat, but after coming home as well, which is important. But not just in the modern time. The Feast of the Einherjar is an important remembrance for our folk as a whole that goes all the way back to the beginning of our time, of our blood, of our people, because we are a noble people that will fight to protect what we own, what we have, those we care about, and our way of life. And for thousands of years, we've lost a lot of men, of women, all around. And the Feast of the Einherjar is to honor all of those warriors, whether it was battlefield warriors or whether it was uh, warriors of another type that fought for our folk. It doesn't just signify those combat veterans or those battlefield warriors wielding axes. It's an ethos that we have to remember and that we have to keep alive, that we will fight for right action, that we will fight for what we believe to be true, and that we will fight for each other.
All right. Tony, the king of cheese. Matt, Nate, good to see you both tonight. How are y'all doing tonight? Nathan, how are you doing?
I'm doing absolutely wonderful, sir.
Tony, I'm doing great as well. I'm a broken record on this, but I really am. I'm doing fantastic. I always enjoy being here. It's one of the highlights of my week. Chase asks, Nathan, what is self-reliance and what does it mean to you? Now, we already kind of got to this at the top of the thing, but is there anything you can add to that or any spin you'd like to put on that?
Yep. Sure. I'll summarize it in: don't wait for someone else to do your job for you. Don't wait for the world to be handed to you on a platter.
That was simply put, but it means more than you know. I think we spend a lot of our lives waiting instead of making the changes manifest in the world that we want to see happen. And I think breaking that mindset is so crucial. And I hope we can all help each other get better at that. It's really important to me. It's one of the reasons, that I named the show what I did, and that victory is such a big thing that I talk about. Is there's so much that we have the ability to achieve and accomplish, but all too often we just don't. We wait for somebody else to do it. We wait for the right time. We wait for a lot of things that allow perfect to be the enemy of good. Nick would like to know, what was the training like to bike 100 miles? And what was it like actually competing and riding that long at once? For folks that don't know, Nate, can you kind of tell them what you competed in and how that worked?
Yep. So up here on the north shore of Lake Superior, every June there's a mountain bike race. It's called the Lutsen 99er. There are lesser length races, as there's a 29er, a 49er, a 69er, and then the culmination of the event is a 99-mile mountain bike race through the mountains of Lake Superior, which for those of you out west, not the same kind of mountains. But to be fair, you're up hills, you're pedaling a mountain bike, and you're going 100 miles. The last year was my first attempt at that. I guess a lot of people start out probably at one of the lesser distances, but I'm the type that jumps in head first. I'm not going to check the temperature of water typically. I'm just going to go all in. And the training for that was the better part of 6 months. For me, it only took about 6 months. I was in the gym a lot. I was doing a lot of high rep, low weight leg workouts. Lot of biking. I would take my mountain bike up to an area not far from here and try to put on 50 miles in a day. I also picked up a road bike just to get the duration in, to get that 100 miles in. And so I started at 20-mile bike ride. I started at, and then moved up to a 40-mile bike ride, and then a 60, 75, 85. And ultimately, then I hit like 105 miles. On a road bike, it's a lot different than a mountain bike. You're going a lot faster. You have significantly less resistance. The hills are smooth. The terrain is smooth. For that Lutsen 99er, you're crossing streams. You're moving at a snail's pace, it seems like, in some areas where there's a shit ton of mosquitoes, pardon my language. You're covered in mud, you're sweating, you're hungry, you're thirsty. You have to stop from time to time to re-up on your water and your high calorie snacks to do it. But I'll tell you what, one of the coolest things I've ever done. And the 8 hours and 13 minutes it took me to do that flew by, because there's 1,000 people competing in that. And I wasn't competing to win. I was doing it as my first attempt to actually complete it. So then moving forward down the road, I'm going to try to take time off of my final score. But I'll tell you what, it flew by. It could have been 2 hours or 8 hours, and I wouldn't have been able to tell the difference because of the pure energy that surrounded that event. The communities in that area all support it, and you have 1,000 people on mountain bikes. You have another 5,000 people cheering them on at different areas. And so, yeah, really cool experience that I've had. Probably one of my top 5 experiences in my life, completing that without needing an ambulance or anything at the end.
Well, no, sounds like a daunting race. So we're all proud of you on that. That's awesome. Obsidian Skull has a question. Why does the AFA uses Anglican priest tippets? I saw the question in another place, but I would like more details since it seemed weird to me. So it's not that we use Anglican priest tippets, or we call them stoles. It's that we both use ancient Roman pagan stoles. So in looking into it, we're trying to figure out something distinctive for our clergy to wear that marks them out recognizably as clergy. And the stole is one of those things in the West that does that. Yes, it is very, very often used by the Christian church and has been since early times, but it doesn't come from any kind of a biblical practice or from any kind of Hebrew ritual garb. It actually comes from ancient Roman, and there's a case to be made. There was something similar in ancient Greece, and it was to signify a learned scholar status. And it evolved over time because those places were hotbeds of the development of Christianity, that Christianity did also use the stole. But it's actually a pagan garment, and that was important to us. One of the benefits is it instantly marks us out as, and some of the scholastic history of it is why you see stoles worn at graduations. But as I was saying, it instantly marks us out as clergy when we're officiating a ceremony, no matter where we're at. And that's worked really well for us because then the people who are not only the people that we're performing ceremony with or for, but also those who see it understand that the person doing it is a clergyman and is a priest. So that's why we end up using those. Chase asks, how is us being self-reliant viewed in the eyes of our gods, in your opinion? Nathan, what do you got to say to that?
Give you some time to think about it on that.
That's why I asked you first.
Yeah. So how is us being self-reliant viewed in the eyes of our gods? Is that what it viewed in the eyes of our gods? In my opinion, I would say that as opposed to Middle Eastern beliefs and practices, our gods want us to strive to be like them, not to be subservient and submitting to them. It's important and viewed by our gods for us to be strong. Whereas alternative beliefs and practices, you are supposed to, it's emphasized to be weak and to be reliant on others, other powers, other unseen entities, and things like that. With our gods, yeah, that's really it in my opinion, and is that our gods want us to strive to be as they are, though that is never an attainable result, but the striving to do so is what's important.
So I think along with this comes certain amount of confusion for folks. And again, I mentioned that this virtue, it's balanced by other virtues. And so finding the exact, when to be self-reliant versus when to be a good cog in the bigger machine is a question. But I go back to the answer that I gave on that earlier. We are stronger when we're each individually strong than we are if we're a collection of weak people. If we're a collection, we can have the same level of cohesion, but are made of much stronger units. Our community is stronger. We absolutely recognize our place in the hierarchy, and we worship our gods. We recognize our gods as greater than ourselves, and we can still do that by being as self-reliant as we can. And that's the thing. Don't get it confused. We are not individually self-sufficient. We need community, and even the best of us needs other people. But there's a difference between doing the best you can and needing other people and just laying there like dead weight and wanting everybody else to carry you. And religiously speaking, that's very different in our faith than, say, Christianity. The Bible makes a big point about being saved by faith and not by works, that none should boast. So my understanding is that the Christian God does not want his people to be proud of their achievements or to achieve, but more to receive the grace and receive the blessings of their God and have their God do it for them. In Asatru, fundamentally, we want our gods to be proud of us. We want to make them proud. We make them proud by doing and by living heroically and by accomplishing. We would love to have the help of the gods, and the gods do help and bless us, but we want to be able to take credit for achieving things so that they have something to be proud of and to celebrate. Our gods are magnified and made better if they're worshiped by heroes than if they're worshiped by losers. Quite frankly, winning is in and of itself an offering to our gods and magnifies them. And we need to keep that in mind. So I think that our gods when asked how it's viewed from our gods, when our gods see us accomplish something great or do and attempt something great, I think that they're proud of us. And that's certainly what we all strive so hard for. Um, Katla asks, Nathan, could you share a powerful or meaningful experience with the gods that you have had?
I'll tell you what, Katla. There has been quite a few times where I've been at Baldershof by myself, where my skin tingles. There's been times where I've been at Bloat, at Odenshof, at Thorshof, at Baldershof, where that Bloat came alive, in regards to our gods around us and our folk gathered in unison in um, a common goal for that Bloat. And so I can't single out just one time specifically, because there's been so many since I've been part of the AFA. There may have been a couple of times prior to the AFA where, um, I won't lie, in Iraq, there was more than once where the only injury I sustained was from shards of the wall behind me, bouncing back from bullets that likely should have gone through me. And, and it was right around that time that I started looking to the Aesir, and these things happened. And, a lot of people will say, oh, well, there's this or there's that, variable that could have led to that. Well, I'll tell you what, once I first started following or looking into the old ways of our people, and the true ways of our people, things started to change for me. There was one time, the first oath I ever took, which I thought long and hard on for months before I did it, where once that oath was taken to our gods, to our Asir, the holy and mighty Asir, that my life changed dramatically and significantly. And so yeah, lots of instances, but a couple of more significant, probably, even though they're all significant. Like I said, combat was something entirely different, but along those same lines. That first oath I made to our holy Asir, I'm not kidding when I say my entire existence, my life changed noticeably. So I hope that answers your question well.
Nick's got a question. He says that you led the Einherjar bloat at the feast this past November. Was that as powerful for yourself leading as it was for the rest of us experiencing it?
Leading that Einherjar bloat was one of the most significant things I've ever been a part of. That Einherjar bloat specifically, the way that it transpired, the area that it took place in, the people that were there, made it what it was. And it was by far the most significant ritual I've not only led, but been a part of. When that ritual started, there wasn't thought. It was just action. And I had an idea of what I wanted to accomplish with that bloat. But once it started, it was like running on autopilot nearly. And it just went, and it just happened.
Those of you who were not fortunate enough to be at Feast of the Iron Yard this year, or I guess last year, we're in January, be there this year. That bloat was very powerful, very powerful. Svan and I talked about this, and it's one way that you can kind of gauge the group spiritual experience to a degree. The culmination of that bloat was the setting alight of a ship that we had, that we placed offerings in, and it was on a lake, and it was uncomfortably cold there. And I watched as a significant number of us, myself included, were literally spellbound. We were literally so in that ecstatic place of bloat that we stood there and we watched this thing burn for a half an hour. And I think that, when we're all in a circle, we're like, man, we need to get back up there and warm up, and this is cold and whatever, all these other things. When the magic hit, we were all just standing there stunned, watching this thing silently and experiencing it together. And it was, we were literally spellbound. It was very powerful. Okay, so this question, all right, it's on two different lines. That's why I was having trouble. All right, how do the gods see us following the self-reliance virtue? I do a bloat asking for the opportunity for something and do a bind rune ritual. Then I go out and do or get what I need to do to get what I wish to attain. I think this is really similar to the question we had just a little bit ago, but is there more that you'd like to add to that, Nate?
Not really. I'd say you really hit the nail on the head earlier, Matt, with your explanation as well. As far as incorporating bind runes and such, that's out of my wheelhouse. I would defer to you if you had anything more to say on that.
Yeah, a little bit. So, I think that, again, all these things need to be balanced. We come before our gods and we ask for things that we don't possess, and maybe things that only they can give us, like their blessings. And sometimes we ask very often for their inspiration, but it's not so much asking for things. When you're doing a bloat and you vow to do something and you create a bind rune about it, and then you go out to achieve a goal or to complete a quest, by doing that in a bloat context, you're doing that as if the quest itself is an offering to the god that you're bloating to. And I think that's really cool that you do that. And I've certainly done that myself. It's not wrong to ask the gods for things that are beyond you or out of your control, or to ask them for help with things that are in your control. But one of the most important things is not to expect them to do the work for you. Asking them for that extra to push you over the edge of something, absolutely. Doing your very best and then asking for a little push is fantastic. There's nothing wrong with that. But sitting around on your couch asking for stuff to appear, that's where we have the problem. And I get that. People coming from different faiths, that's, literal interpretation of the Bible tends to lend itself towards that. And our faith is very much a contrast to that. But, we covered it earlier. I would say that, not only accomplish things for yourself, but accomplish things in order to glorify our gods or to give fame to your family or to one of your ancestors. You can accomplish stuff at where the act of accomplishment is a gift, is an offering, is a sacrifice. And I think that's kind of a cool way of achieving. Christine says, excuse me, what are your recommendations to teach our children and young adults how to be self-reliant? What are your thoughts on that, Nathan?
I would say problem-solving skills are at the forefront of becoming self-reliant. Our children, the next generation coming up and such, need to be able to learn how to figure things out for themselves, obviously on very, very small scales for the very young, and in increasing magnitude as they get older. Whether it's helping to pick up toys for a toddler and putting them all in the same area in the end, or it's, when it comes to homework for older children and such. And then, as it at an ever increasing magnitude, like I said, starting from the very young all the way, and it's something that we never stop doing, which is one of the greatest aspects of it. It's something that we can always learn more or refine specifically. I would like to say too that self-reliance is more than just figuring out your homework as well. It's as you grow and mature, going to become something that is more of an internal drive and quest for an individual as well. That problem solving, you can be have a natural mechanical aptitude for things and whatnot, whether it's computer programming or mathematics or languages or being an auto mechanic, but to be able to problem solve your life as well when difficulties arise. Helping talk your children, the next generation, through things so that they understand what it feels like to start to break things apart as they get older, to be able to comprehend those conversations, obviously.
Certainly everything that Nathan just said, absolutely. One thing that I think is super important is to never let the idea of helplessness take root in your kids. Don't ever let you, because they don't start out that way. They start out seeing the world as full of opportunity and all these things they have dreams about and aspirations to do and to become and to make happen. Don't kill that, and don't let the world kill that. Find ways to reinforce positive things that they can do and can achieve, and encourage them to, even if they're tiny steps, to take actual steps towards that direction. And what Nate said about little kids, have them help you with stuff, have them do things and be part of stuff. And when I say help, I help in the air quotes. My daughter is 2, and she's not literally that helpful, but her fussing with stuff and pretending to help and being around, trying to be an active participant in things is really cool. And I think a lot is built on that. But you got to, especially in the world that we live in today, white kids and especially young white boys need all of the voices that they can in their ear telling them, yes, they can succeed, they can achieve, and they can build their dreams. Because I don't think that that's reinforced by society today. So it's all that more incumbent upon us to make that message loud, clear, and overwhelming so that it drowns out some of these other signals they're getting. Daniel asks, Nathan, could you speak on your experience as a Gothar student and how self-reliance has helped you in that pursuit?
Well, self-reliance as a Gothar student, in order to complete anything, you have to do the work, right? And in order to do the work, you have to be self-reliant because we are not sitting in a classroom. We are not being directed physically, or even we're not being directed. It's up to us as individuals in that class, in that program, in order to take that initiative to complete things and to succeed, to keep moving forward with it. And so, yeah, that's where the self-reliance comes in regards to that, because nobody's going to do it for you as much as you want them to. You have help, you have guidance, you have support, but nobody's going to do the work for you.
All right. Human Manipulation Nation, I have a question. How about we start an at-home workout until the first day of spring? Go from there. Maybe walking, running, basic exercises like push-ups, squats, sit-ups, and possibly some free weights.
That's a great idea.
Yes, you should absolutely do that. Is there anything on that you'd like to add, or I'm trying to think of how to address the question because I don't really see the question in it. Do you have any thoughts on that, Nathan?
I'm guessing you might be referring to maybe a virtual type setting, possibly. Which, if you want to start something like that, by all means, it's a great idea. It's gonna. I don't know. I don't know, man. I think you have to start something somewhere on your own and get that ball rolling first, and people will jump on board if you are successful and you show that drive to make sure it succeeds. And I don't know how I feel about doing a virtual workout. I just assume get at it. But hey, everybody's got their own approach to those things. So.
What Nate said, and then absolutely on the topic of self-reliance, if that's something you want to do and you feel you need to work on, go out and do it. Go out and do it and show and share what you've done that's been successful. One of the cool things, if that's what you want to do, I mean, I'm not a real workout at home guy. I really like to go to the gym. It's something I always look forward to, and but everybody's got different ways they want to work out. If this is something you want to do it, but share it on our physical excellence page on MeWe. Share it with other people so they can be inspired by what you're doing and encourage them, if they want to do something similar, to do it. If you want to do something like that and then help each other to stay on track or to be accountable, I think that's great. But it all starts with you getting out there and just making it happen. How would you define the importance of self-reliance in terms of complementing the strength of being in a group? Nathan?
We've kind of covered this a little bit already, a couple of times. Being self-reliant doesn't mean you are alone by any means. It has nothing to do with the physical proximity of people around you. It has to do with how you motivate yourself and how you create that drive, and to incorporate that into a group setting is going to make a group successful, or it's going to make a group fail, depending on the level of that self-reliance of the group members. And like our Elshiri Gothi had mentioned earlier, a weak and pitiful group of people that comes together isn't going to hold a flame to a group of strong, self-reliant members of that same of another group. And so that group strength is only going to increase as the self-reliance of its members increases.
You know, that's an important aspect of that, because having the virtue and the capability of self-reliance doesn't mean you always have to rely on yourself. It means that you're able to rely on yourself. You can function. There's no situation in a group where just on the merits of self-reliance alone, you're better off being less self-reliant than you are being more self-reliant. If everybody in a group is self-reliant by nature, then you have redundancy. If people fall out or are not able to do certain things, you have people there ready to step in and to help and to make stuff happen and to take initiative. It's one of those values that once you're, if you were ultimately super self-reliant and capable of doing all these things yourself, there's no way that takes away from the group. That only strengthens it and makes it better. That maximizes the skill set of any group and really brings that to the fore. But the two things, group participation and the ability to do for oneself, aren't mutually exclusive in any way. Now, Lawrence gave us 10 Canadian dollars and a comment. If anybody else would like to send donations to us or participate in Super Chat, Lawrence gets his thing set up here before all these other questions. You can do that on Entropy. Good evening, gents. Nathan, I am intrigued by your mountain bike adventures / event. I may be getting a little old for pedaling now, but I'm looking at getting back into motorized trails riding. There's something very freeing about being on two wheels, in addition to it being a fantastic form of exercise.
Wonderful. Outstanding. Anytime you can immerse yourself in nature, in your environment out there, granted, they have e-bikes now, e-mountain bikes that are battery powered. And that way you have the audio immersion into nature around you as well. So think about that. Take a look at some of those e-mountain bikes. That's one way to really immerse yourself once you've gotten, to a point to where you're not going to be able to hit those mountain trails and stuff without a little bit of assistance, which there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. We're all going to be there. I'm 43. I'm going to be there someday where I'm going to have to trade in my mountain bike and get an e-mountain bike so that I can be out there and immerse myself.
Brandy asks, Nathan, how were you able to convince our folk from a few brave women to a Steve McNallen himself to jump into the freezing water?
Well, Brandy, don't tell anybody, but there's threats involved. As a secret.
Well, if people don't know, Nate, could you kind of tell people what went down and how that all came about?
So this started last year at the first Feast of the Einherjar on Lake of the Ozarks, and we had a dock, which was a lot more helpful to doing an early morning swim. Our founder, Stephen McNallen, is an advocate for the cold water, and he's up for any type of challenge, typically. And so for the crew, that first event, we said, well, hey, how about an early morning set of push-ups for the group for our fallen heroes, for our fallen soldiers, for our fallen family members, and then culminating with a jump in the water. And without hesitation, Founder McNallen said he's on board. Anybody that wants to join, meet me down at 7 a.m. And so then this last year as well, we got to keep that tradition going. So this last year we had even more. There must have been about 15 of us. 15 of us jumped in that water. It was below freezing air temperature. But this last year we were in Oklahoma as opposed to Missouri, so the water temperature was a little bit warmer, which made a little bit of a difference, except for the fact that we had a walk-in versus jumping off a dock. But that exhilaration, that shock to the system is what it was really about. That sacrifice of your comfort into the cold, to honor those who we were honoring for that event that weekend and those ceremonies that happened there.
Good deal. I got a question from your fiance. How has becoming a family man changed your view on the importance of self-reliance and consistency? Asking for a friend.
Well, I'll tell you what, it would be a lot easier if I could find the scissors, but well, it's a new experience for me, and an experience I wholeheartedly embrace, because working as a team, you accomplish so much more than working as an individual. And so that self-reliance is still there for each of us. As my beautiful fiance is a very self-reliant person as well and can always find the scissors for me, which none of you will get except for maybe Whit and Callahan. But no, it's made me stronger. It's made me a better person, a better man as a whole, learning to be part of that intimate team of two self-reliant people coming together.
You know, I don't get the inside joke per se, but girls like to hide stuff. I know Mandy very seldom puts things back in the place that would be easily observable and findable by me. So Nathan, what genre of music do you prefer?
Well, that entirely depends on my mood. I will listen to everything from old classic country to classical music to heavy metal, hard rock. The only thing that I really can't get on board with is the hip hop kind of stuff. I can get into some of the 90s, as I am 43. And so some of the older hip hop stuff I can tolerate, but for me, it's all about the messaging more than anything. Unless I'm at the gym and I just need some hard hitting music to pump me up and get me amped and ready to push beyond my perceived limits at that time.
All right. Ryan asks, can you show us a stole? I'll hear your Gothi Matt. I certainly can. And Nick's got one queued up that he's going to pop on your screen right now. Maybe. In theory. There we go. Excellent. So that's my stole. The Alsheri Gothi stole is gold and a little bit bigger. The Witten also have stoles. Their stoles are white, and the Gothar have stoles, and their stoles are blue. Obsidian Skull has a question for you, Nathan. Do you have any thoughts on the new find of the oldest datable runestone? Do you think this lessens the theory that the runes were derived from the Roman alphabet?
I did see that headline the other day. I really didn't get an opportunity to read on it at all, though. So I'm kind of at a loss with that question.
One thing I think is, I don't know, an interesting note on that. The assumption gets made that the Romans or the Etruscans or the Germanics are completely separate groups of peoples. And I think that the further you go back, certainly, and when we talk about our spiritual heritage, the further you go back, those are all branches of Aryan peoples, and there's a common root to all of that. So I think that there is an endless series of sharing and different mythic elements, different elements of society rising and falling and transferring between these peoples that share that same common root and that same common association with a lot of these things. So I don't think it's always a very simple answer to find out exactly where something comes from, because things pass back and forth through different civilizations all of the time. But in any case, I think it's important to know that these things do come from our Aryan folk soul. And they're very much magical. Writing in itself is magic. It's a profound magic to our people. It's a primitive time travel, at least for ideas. You can write and you can send your experiences into the future. So I think it was always held in a magical context amongst our folk. Something else I think is important to think about with the runes. The runes aren't the little stick drawings. I mean, they are colloquially, obviously, but the rune is the mystery that those lines represent. And that can be displayed in any number of ways. Those mysteries, we happen to know them and associate them with a certain configuration of straight lines, but that doesn't have to be the case. It's important to know that the rune is the magic behind it, not the sigil that personifies the magic. Rabbi Goldstein has a question. Good evening, gentlemen. Do you think that we are witnessing the fall of the American empire, living in the last years before the collapse, or it's just a stage before the reset? I think Nick posted something out of context below it that I thought might be connected. What are your thoughts on that, Nathan? Are we witnessing the fall of the American empire?
I guess let's wait and see what the next election brings. It's a conversation that comes up frequently, and it's not new by any means. Every time a new regime takes power of the United States, the other side says it's the fall of the United States. So let's just stand by, wait and see.
You know, I think that, I don't know, people get very fired up and like to jump to this conclusion. But I think one thing that's important, whether we're witnessing that fall or not, if we use, because I think that historically the example that gets used, falling, an empire falling, tends to be that of Rome. When the Roman Empire in the West fell, it was a period of hundreds of years that equaled that fall. That fall took place over a period of time longer than America's been in existence. So are we declining and headed towards that? I mean, history will tell us that once we get there in hindsight. Um, but I think it's kind of beside the point. We are witnessing a period where there's massive degeneracy and there's an erosion of what the concept of America is or was. Certainly, the America that we are giving to our children is not the same America that we were raised in. And that's even a bigger difference the older the generation of person I'm speaking to when I say that. What I think is fundamental is that we are poised to be successful, whatever that outcome might be. I think that it's very often that we get caught up in apocalyptic fantasies about things that we would do if civilization collapsed. And I think that's fun and it's an interesting thought process, but fundamentally, we've seen generations of people that have invested in that and spent their fortune and their entire life preparing for, the apocalypse, and it never happening. And those people have wasted a lot of time and a lot of resources. So I think whatever that we do, either as individuals or as groups, should be based on being successful no matter the outcome. So it's why we try really hard in the AFA to make moves that if things keep going the way they are, we'll be set. We'll be in a good spot. If everything collapses, we'll be in a good position to handle that. And if things get amazingly better, we'll be in a great position to capitalize on that as well. So I think staying versatile with that is extremely important. Even if we are in a decline or a fall, that fall is very seldom something rapid. And it can take place over centuries. So we need to be very prepared for whatever tomorrow brings. And the likelihood is tomorrow is going to be real similar to today. So just thoughts to keep in mind. I go back and I read some of the old rune stones, and we've got old timers freaking out about Y2K happening. And then we watch, and the world in the year 2000 was very, very similar to the world in 1999. So I think we need to look at the long game and not wish and bet on, lightning destruction of civilization so that we can rebuild something completely fresh. We need to work within the structures that we have and be prepared in case a situation like that does happen. Can you tell us a bit about your journey from joining the AFA to becoming a folk builder and finally joining the Gothar program? I know you've already addressed this a little bit, Nathan, but if you could kind of run us through that again with the addition of your Gothic aspirations.
Absolutely. So I joined the AFA and I got to work, plain and simple. I was welcomed with open arms and frith from everybody that I encountered at Baldershof and got to work. With that, I got to learn about the structure of the AFA. And once I started learning about the structure of the AFA, that I found out there was ways that I could help more people experience what I experienced in joining the AFA. And so then I asked about what it took to become a folk builder. And from there, I apprenticed as a folk builder and ultimately then was oathed in as a folk builder and wanted more still. So the next step would be to enter the Gothar program. And my aspirations of becoming clergy for the AFA are nearly the pinnacle, if not the pinnacle, of what I want for myself and my family. And, just taking things to the next level always to try to be more involved and effective, and to show people that it doesn't matter where you started out, or the things that have happened to you in your life, that things can change for the better if you want them to, and that typically comes with taking on responsibilities. And for me, that's what that was. Taking on more and more responsibilities is what gave me a better quality of life. And for lack of a better term, I live and breathe the AFA now. And because it's important to me, it's important to my family, it's important to my community, it's important to my church that I live by that right action, that we try to continually do better and be better.
All right, guys, we've got 2 questions left. If you guys have more questions, please go ahead and throw them in the chat and Nick will get them up. And if not, we'll hit these 2 questions and we'll call it a night. But there was something interesting over on the side. And I know you guys were joking. But yeah, I don't know if you can see the side conversation, Nathan, but they joke that you're trying to take my job. And honestly, I think this is a good time to talk about that positive competition. Great if he is. If he has, I mean, I don't want him to steal it from me, but if he has the ambition to be where I am, one of the things that is fundamental to the AFA worldview is that we want to encourage ambition. I want everyone to try to be the best that they can be. It keeps me on my toes and helps me want to be better. If he is trying to eyeball my job, it's going to mean he's going to be doing better than he is. And it means I better keep, 1 step ahead, because if he catches me slipping, I'm going to lose my spot. So honestly, in a completely positive way, we want to encourage each other by being successful ourselves. When you're ambitious and you step up, and just in the way Nate was just talking about it, each one of these new levels of ambition isn't just for the fame or reward. Those things are great, but it's also taking on ever increasing responsibilities, more responsibilities and more serious responsibilities. And we want everybody to do that. That's important for our leadership. It's important for our membership. We always want to compete and be better than those around us. And we want those around us to try their best to be better than us. By doing that, we all get better. We all rise with that. So I think that's essential to kind of how the AFA sees some things.
And absolutely, if I can add to that too.
Of course.
It's that competition amongst peers that pushes everyone to do better and to be better. It's that competition amongst a friendly competition, keep in mind, because we are looking out for the betterment of each other in that competition. We are looking for the betterment of our folk in that competition. Nobody can do what Matt does because nobody is Matt. So we'll leave that at that.
Well, I appreciate that. Next question is, for those of us that are severely hurt, do you have any ideas on how to get past pain to work out? Nate, what are your thoughts on that?
I'd say it depends on the pain and the severity of the injury. Obviously, with a significant injury of any type, you don't want to push it. There's recovery, there's rehabilitation for certain injuries, pretty much any injury physically. But if you are hurt due to something that's not going to be rehabilitated, that just means you have to find alternative ways to incorporate fitness or exercise into your life. And there's infinite ways to do that. It just depends on what you are capable of doing without further injuring yourself, which is what's important.
Um, yeah, so Monk, that's a really hard question because the details on that really, really matter. I have some thoughts though, and this isn't just for you, but anybody out here who's listening to that. Is the pain indicative of something continuing to break down, or is it just discomfort? If it's just discomfort, work through it. If it is an indication that you are breaking something or further damaging something, then certainly that's got to get addressed. Like Nate said, you don't want to make anything worse. And it's a strange balance. There's some people that, I noticed that since I hit 40, everything hurts. There's no 100%. There's battling for if I feel 85% on a day, then I know I'm doing all right. So training within that is always kind of a challenge. One thing, as my joints, because I've got some really bad joint damage. As I've gotten older and my joints have gotten more banged up, I do a lot more machine work and a lot less free weights. For anybody just starting out, if you're young and you're healthy and you got good joints for it, free weight movements are the best bang for your buck. But when you throw in range of motions issues, joint issues, and chronic pain issues, changing over to machines helps a lot. And so I do that. And even though I do still use free weight movements, I prioritize in the rotation of how I do my sets, or not sets, rather, how I do my exercises. I try to do the machine exercises first so that I pre-exhaust the major muscles, so that when I do the free weight exercises, I'm slinging less weight around proportionally. And I think my joints are well warmed up and well lubricated at that point. I saw over in the side a suggestion that I think is a really, really solid one. Diamond Dallas Page does this yoga thing. It comes out of his experience in professional wrestling, but those guys beat their body up really, really bad. And he's dealt with all different kind of people at this point on dealing with those kind of very serious pain issues and getting past mobility issues and things that way. Looking into that, I really don't think is a bad idea at all. Another thing that I think is, I just kind of discovered this past couple of years, is the chiropractor. I thought the chiropractor was just about backs. Not the case. They're about all of your joints. And, I went to a doctor to see about my joints. It was the biggest waste of time of my life. It was somebody that's never worked out, that doesn't know what they're doing, that was completely useless, and I didn't feel any better. Every time I've gone to a chiropractor, I've left feeling better than I went in. And the chiropractors that I've found, now certainly find one that's right for you or shares your experiences, but the chiropractors I've found have been people that do work out, work with athletes, and are able to understand what I'm talking about and help me in functional ways. So if you haven't tried it, chiropractors are a huge, huge help. But without knowing more about the specifics, I think that's the best I've got. So question for you, Nathan, 5 favorite books, not lore and not Edda's. And what's your favorite saga?
5 favorite books that have nothing to do with our lore or Edda's. Teutonic mythology. Does that count? Yeah. Okay. Let's go fiction. How about that? That's what I'm understanding that's being asked here. I love mysteries. I love crime novels, stuff like that. John Sanford is an author that I really, really like and have read many of his books. He's an ex police officer in Minneapolis. He's an ex U.S. Marshal and detective for the police department and stuff, and many other things, and then started writing books about some of his experiences in law enforcement. And so within his books, they're based on his actual experiences with investigations and stuff. Plus, you recognize the locations and everything like that, as myself anyway, being from Minnesota and knowing that, being familiar with what he's writing about in those locations. So, what was the second part of that question?
What's your favorite saga?
Oh, that's a tough one. I don't even know. I like the Fooling of Gylfi.
All righty. So following on to this kind of a theme, who are your favorite painters that specialize in depicting concepts of Aryan faiths? Though he primarily does Rodnova paintings, mine is Andrei Shishkin.
I am not very familiar with artist names. I do like, if I were to choose, it would be anything done by our folk. We have a lot of talented artists in the AFA. We have a few close to home here in Baldershof district. And so if there were artists that I would be privy to, or not privy to, but be compelled to have pieces of their work, it would be members of the AFA that are extremely talented.
So yeah, I think this is a different way than maybe the question was going. But my favorite artist that depicts concepts of Aryan faiths is Wittens von Harrell. He does the murals at each of our hofs, and that's not just because I run the AFA or because I've helped Svan with some of those projects, at least conceptually. What it is that's really important is he is a practitioner. So often the people that do the art don't have a genuine belief in the art they're depicting. Very often you have mythological art done by people who it's a curiosity or it's an interest, but not by people who genuinely worship the God that they depict. And it makes all the difference. They are powerful. Svan's works are powerful in a way that even the most beautiful works done by someone who isn't Asatru can't hope to capture. The power that's there comes from his piety and his worship of the God that he's depicting. So that would be my favorite. Nathan, what brought you to Asatru?
What brought me to Asatru? Something deep in my bones, in my blood. I suppose you could say in my genetic memory, and something that I couldn't grasp at the time, but knew was there. And as I explained kind of at the beginning of this, I knew there was something more than what I had been told. And the way I was raised, I pulled away from and started going towards this route. And then ultimately, as an adult, finding our faith, our gods, our ancestors' beliefs, and then just running with it.
All right. What is one thing you want to tell our menfolk?
There's a lot of things I'd like to tell our menfolk, but strong individuals make strong families make strong communities.
All right. Next, Nate, congratulations on the early success of the Baldershoff Lords group. You and Cody are doing a great service for our menfolk. Can you speak on the importance of brotherhood and our, especially young, men coming together in a positive way outside of the warrior mentality?
Warrior mentality is a very, very small aspect to who we are. Our family mindsets, our community mindsets is so much more important. And in Cody had come to me a while back wanting to create a men's group for Baldershoff District specifically. And I had been in contact with a couple of our members, Michael Sessoms and Stephen Mundy out in Odenshoff, and have been sitting in on their Odenshoff men's group a few times. And so that's what really gave me the direction to pursue this and to go with this and to then ultimately have some sort of guidance as to how Cody can make this happen, or not just Cody, but Cody and I together. And it's important because we are not solitary practitioners. We need to be together. We need to come together as men. We need to come together as communities, and having these chats or these groups where we can get to know one another across districts is of utmost importance. And that's how you build relationships, and that's how you strengthen the communities that you're in and our church as a whole, by building those relationships.
Brandy's got a message for you. Please let Nathan know that Ashley says the scissors are in the knife block on the counter. Also, the Hoff bottle opener is on the side of the fridge.
Thanks, Brandy. Thanks, Ashley.
I have another question. Nathan, what have you learned about having and growing a strong or a solid, strong family?
Growing a solid and strong family is a never-ending task. In order for your family to become strong and to maintain that strength, it's a never-ending job that takes both partners. And what I've learned from that is that it's a lot of work. It is a ton of work, and it takes a lot of patience. But at the same time, it takes a lot of motivation, because you have to be as motivated to build your family and to strengthen your family as motivated to incorporate that patience within yourself. And you can't stop. You can never stop trying to strengthen your family, because the family is an ever evolving and changing unit as people grow and as people learn different things, especially when you're starting from newborns and toddlers and then young children and everything like that. They're going to get ideas that are absolutely wrong, and you're going to have to train them and teach them and show them how to conduct themselves over a period of time. And that's going to take a lot of patience, because they are their own little people. And I'd like to say we have a strong family unit here. And as long as Ashley and myself maintain our solidarity and strength together, as individuals and as a cohesive pair, our family should only grow in strength.
All right. And I'm going to do my best with this question. I think there's a little bit of a language barrier. Antonio asks, what religious groups does the AFA has more connections to the ancient Aryans? I'm really a history and religion geek when it comes to this kind of stuff. So Nathan is confusing me with strange hand signals. I'm not certain what that question is. Now I'm supposed to go both ways. I'm not certain what the question is. So a couple of different stabs at what the question might be. If it has to do with other groups that also have strong connections to our ancient Aryan traditions, there's really not that I'm aware of that are interacting, that are functional in the United States, certainly. I do believe there are some groups in Europe, especially in Eastern Europe, that have, like in Rodnovery and such, but I'm not sure which specific organization they belong to, that are also practicing faith that's very directly connected to our ancient ancestors. Unfortunately, any of the Hellenismos or Roman pagan groups or Druid groups tend to not be very sincere, not be very authentic, and tend to be a excuse for license and degeneracy very often. I don't really think there's any other Asatru options that are as connected and that are following our ancient faith in the way the AFA does, certainly. But again, there may be some groups in Europe that do. I hope that addresses your question. No, I see on the sides, no, Antonio, you participate in these weekly and we really appreciate you. Sorry, I can't give you a better answer to your question, but maybe we can think more on it and you can clear it up for me a little bit at some point. Yes. So I also see a mention of the Arztgemeinschaft in Germany. I can't say I'm an expert on them. I did get to meet their leadership and some of their members at a event that we had in Sweden a while back, and they were fantastic to meet in person. They seem like they're very solid people. So yeah, if you're in Germany, I would check those folks out as well. And good on you, Ryan, for pointing that out. What else do we got here? Okay, we got a couple of more questions here. Given the opportunity to prepare a meal for yourself, what do you make? What meal do you cook for your family? Nathan, what do you cook if you're making a meal for yourself, and what would you cook for your family?
Oh, wow. Well, that changes over time. That changes with work schedules. That changes with Ashley's school schedules. She does the vast majority of cooking for us. If I were to choose something, I would grill some steaks, grill some brats, throw some burgers out there. For myself and our family, that's always been my go-to. Fortunately, I have Ashley, who is more health conscious in the food preparation arena than I am. So she does most of our work for that.
Yeah, there was no name attached to it, so I'm gonna chime in a little bit too. I don't make meals for myself, honestly. I make protein shakes and chicken. If I'm making stuff for myself, unless there's a special occasion, it's usually something to get my macros in the way I'm trying to get them, and it's not so much done for gourmet value as for fuel. When I celebrate, that's different. And I think that goes a little bit more into what I cook for my family. Again, Mandy eats like I do, so we don't typically cook a lot for ourselves. And Aubrey's at a point where she's being really picky about what she's going to eat. So it's kind of an odd question. I do like having people over once a month and cooking for the events at my house. And when that's the case, I like to find interesting off the wall things that sound like they'd be good and like they'd be fun to make. I enjoy cooking. I enjoy cooking for people that I care about and extending hospitality in that way. I will throw out there, I've mentioned it before on here, but tropical schnitzel is my go-to that I think is really good. There's a lot of other stuff you can do, but tropical schnitzel is good stuff. If you get the opportunity, I'll make it for you. You would enjoy it. The last question, and I think we're going to call it, this is the last one for tonight. And I think it's a good question. So, bonus, I see over on the side, Allie is asking me when I'm going to make the blueberry soup. It's a really good question. Thank you for reminding me. She gave me an awesome Swedish recipe book. And I will tell you, I'm going to make some of that and I'll tell you how it turns out. So last real question. What would you say to lone wolf types who share our beliefs but won't make the jump to join the men and women among our ranks? Nathan, what would you say to those folks?
I'd say I hate it for you. Plain and simple, because our gods and goddesses, our ancestors, we were never meant to practice as soul practitioners. And so if you're not willing to make the jump, hey, by all means, I'm glad you have found your gods and your way, but I am truly sorry that you won't make the jump to join your folk and join a community.
We run into these people from time to time. And realistically, my first step isn't what to say to them. It's more what to ask. And, why not? What is the holdup is what I always want to know. And very seldom do I get answers that are particularly substantive. Very often it's a fear of wanting to commit to something. Sometimes it's a reluctance to be held accountable. It all comes down to, it takes courage to jump off the fence and to throw yourself at something, to be involved in something. And when you do, risks come with that. Emotional risks come with any kind of commitment. So what I would tell those people is, we need you. We need all our people on board to make this happen and to move forward. And I would challenge you to have the courage to give it a shot. This already presupposes that you share our beliefs. If you believe in what we believe in and you stand for what we stand for, then stand with us and let's make stuff happen. Let's be victorious. With that, thank you so much for joining us tonight, Nathan, and congratulations on being the example of self-reliance to our folk.
Thank you, sir. It's been my pleasure. I'm truly honored to have been here tonight.
Well, it was great to have you, and I'm sure we'll have you back on in the future. Thank you guys all for participating, for listening, for asking great questions. Think about that. If you can make it to Njordhof for Charming of the Plow here in 2 weeks in White Springs, Florida, it's a place that you want to be. Until next time, hail the gods, hail the folk, hail the AFA, and remember that victory never sleeps.